Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're not already, please consider going and following us on Twitter and Instagram. We actually got a ton of new followers from our last video where I requested that people go follow us. We did reach 10,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. It's a good place to kind of stay in touch with us. I'm also trying to post more regularly on Instagram with things like stations and things I notice around the city when I'm out and about, so I think it's a good way of keeping in touch. Anyways, on to today's video. So in today's video, I want to talk about why you should go car-free. Now, there's a lot of obvious reasons why owning a car kind of sucks. You have to pay for tons of things like maintenance, insurance, road tolls, congestion charges, gas. But there's also soft reasons why I think that owning a car is really negative. Things like emissions, the cost of parking that you have to pay, encouraging sprawl and kind of a worse city environment for everyone. The fact that when you own a car, I feel like you tend to live a more sedentary lifestyle. There's a lot of negatives about cars that we just don't think about when we purchase or own cars. One of the big factors that people in the transit space think about a lot is once someone owns a car, how that changes the way they travel. The thing is, it turns out a lot of places are really livable without a car. If you live in any of the top 5 or 6 biggest Canadian cities, I totally believe you can live without a car if you live anywhere near the city center, and the same can be said for most large urban areas in North America, much less the rest of the world where transit tends to be better and cities tend to be more compact. Now, back to the point about how people travel when they own a car. The thing is, often, even in poorly designed North American cities with weird zoning regulations and such, people do live relatively close to things like grocery stores and other regular amenities that they need to travel to. The thing is, once you own a car, you're willing to travel much further for things like groceries and everyday amenities, even things like school. This is kind of a byproduct of owning a car itself. Once you own a car, well, you have a different set of options of places to travel to and businesses to access than if you're using public transit and walking. I don't necessarily think that owning a car gives you access to more businesses overall, but it will give you access to different businesses. For example, while I, as someone who primarily uses transit, would be much more likely to say go downtown to access a lot of businesses, I think a general car user would be much more likely to head further out into the suburbs to reach big box stores and other similar businesses. What this leads to is car owners tending to do a lot more trips in their cars to go visit far-flung destinations, which means that the car gets used even more and more. What this also means is that overall, car users tend to drive more, even for trips where they don't necessarily need to use their car. So, much like a lot of things we talk about with cars and how they impact traffic, etc., car use in itself is kind of an induced thing. Once you own a car and you're paying all these user fees for owning a car, it kind of makes sense to use your car to do all your trips, and once you do that, transit becomes less attractive. Once you don't own a car and transit becomes more of your trips, well, you start living a different lifestyle. You tend to shop at businesses closer to where you are, and I think that helps the local economy. And when I say local, I mean on a really micro level, like the economy in a 10-block radius around your house. It's really interesting to me how people don't really walk around their neighborhoods, especially in the suburbs. Where I live in Toronto, I would venture to guess that most people, if you were to ask them to draw a simple map of the neighborhood and list some of the minor streets, they wouldn't be able to list anything except for the major thoroughfares. And I think that that's a kind of byproduct of the fact that people don't really walk around and don't cycle around as well. I really combine cycling and walking because I think that you think about a lot of the same things, especially when you live in an urban environment that's quite hostile to both. There's definitely a couple points that come up again and again when people argue for car use. Some things would be travel time and overall convenience, but I think that you have to kind of balance this. When you're talking about transit, of course, your travel time is a lot more valuable than when you're in a car. When I'm riding a bus, I can check my phone, go on social media, check the internet, read a book. All these things are very much possible. When you're driving a car, you really can only drive, listen to music, or maybe a podcast, but that might be pushing it even for some people. Now, of course, inclement weather also probably comes up a lot, and that's because I personally live in an area like Toronto, where it's snowy and cold for a lot of the year. But even in this case, the urban environment is designed around a lot of this as well. And if there's a major snowstorm coming, I tend to just prepare a bit in advance, and then I don't have to worry too much about going out when the weather is poor. And transit use and walking is impossible when you're using a car, as long as you put on a jacket. And fortunately, once more people start living car-free, we see adaptations to the urban environment that make it easier. Things like the path in downtown Toronto and new heated bus shelters that you start to see in different areas. These are the kind of things that you probably wouldn't see as a necessity if you're just driving up to your transit station and hopping on a train, for example. But once you start using transit all the time and you're waiting sometimes longer for vehicles and such, this sort of thing makes sense. And then there's another huge factor, which I think we talk about way too little in North America: exercise. Now, obesity and underactivity are a huge problem in North America, as they are in a lot of places in the world. And when you go to places where transit is really good, Japan comes to mind, one thing you notice is that people are way more active just doing their daily routines. I think it's very interesting that when you say go to the grocery store in Japan, that's actually exercise. And when you go to work, it's exercise. And when you do your regular commute, it's exercise. This is something that I think general transit users are probably somewhat aware of. If you're taking all your trips on transit, the truth is that you're probably going to be walking a lot more. And the same is true if you're taking some of your trips cycling. You're being more active, and there's a huge positive in that I don't think people consider when they try to choose between driving and riding transit. I hope you guys enjoyed this video where I talked a bit more about why I think going car-free is such a wise decision. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.
Start it up.